Lauren, hello there.
Hey,
Welcome. Episode 8. We are missing Sam today, but unfortunately that's going to get overlooked very quickly here because for the first time so far in our podcast, we officially have a college football champion. The season is over. Things have concluded, and the Cinderella story finished as well as you certainly, back months ago, you were on the Mendoza hype train nice and early. Um, there was, like Miami did very well to get to the playoff final. I think they had a great run. They beat all the teams they defeated were ranked higher than them. They held A&M to 3 points. Equally, Indiana's run was incredible. They beat Alabama by 30. They beat Oregon by 30. So it was going to be. I think the final was enjoyable to watch, and it was obviously a very very competitive game. But we had the perfect ending: 16-0, undefeated, a Heisman winning quarterback who will almost certainly go number one overall. Kurt Signetti, like what a season for him, and just an incredible season from Indiana's perspective, having kind of come from nowhere and now being at the top of American college sports. And actually, I would even go one further and say one of the best seasons, individual seasons that we maybe have ever seen, at least in American sports, including kind of the national or I should say, the professional ranks. I mean, it was just remarkable season all around from Indiana.
yeah, it was definitely legendary. I think I said this before, is like, I just think that it would be so cool. I mean, I knew they were going to win. I had Indiana winning because
Yeah, okay.
we watched history play out. Like, they're the only team since 1894, Yale, in, CFP history, this era at least, to go 16-0 and making Fernando Mendoza, the only Indiana player to ever win the Heisman so far, B, to do it and then have a 16-0 season, even more record breaking that we're seeing, even more history that we're watching go down, and become the 8th quarterback to win the Heisman and win the national championship. The last person who did that was DeVonta Smith in 2020 with Alabama. And then before that was the year before with Joe Burrow. But it was just so cool to get to watch. Like, we'll look back at this and people will talk about this in 20, 30 years when some random team tries to do it again. Who knows, But we watched it happen in this era. And it has not happened. Like, a 16-0 team has not happened in over 100 years. Like, 140 years, I think. That math sounds, nearly correct. But 1894, like, think about how long ago that really was. And it was Yale who did it. And college football was way different back then. Conferences were different. Teams were different. Schools weren't even made yet. And now you have Fernando Mendoza, this perfect little baby quarterback who was just the heart and soul of Indiana, and everyone was rooting for him. And I think that it was very easy to do so. Like, unless you were a Miami fan, you were rooting for Indiana. Like, there was no way you could look at this kid and say, I want to see him lose. What? Look at his mom. Look at his mom cheering for him. And his dad, like, out of solidarity, because his mom can't stand, like, doesn't stand to cheer for Fernando. And he has that amazing, like, game leaping catch into the end zone. And he's, like, sitting with his wife and cheering for their son. Like, that's just so heartfelt. It's just, I mean, the storyline around this, like, you cannot make this up, I think that was part of what made this such a great finish to the season, is getting to see a guy like Fernando Mendoza and a coach like Kurt Signetti turn this team around in only 2 years. That's never happened before. No coach has ever come in and had only 2 years and then wins a national championship. That's insane. We just watched that happen. Like, go Hoosiers, forever. I'm looking at, even though his brother transferred, though. Alberto transferred to Georgia Tech.
Yes, I heard that. Yeah. And you would kind of mention that he might actually step up and be next season's starting quarterback.
Because I
But
was like, oh, at least they have another Mendoza to take one's place.
yeah,
After talking to a few people, they agreed, which I didn't, really see this perspective until they pointed it out to me, but that he stayed because he wanted to be on the team with his brother and finish out the season, until he got drafted. But now it's time for him to, like, make his own story, per se, and like, not have to follow, like, the Fernando Mendoza of the team and be the second Mendoza and have all these expectations. Like, he's gonna go and do his own thing. And I can respect that, I guess. Like, I get the decision behind it.
Yeah, I mean, equally, I like someone who also has an older brother. I I understand that perfectly, but like, looking at what Kurt Signetti did this year, the opportunity to play under him potentially as a starter, as a starting quarterback, like, it's almost like that kind of like the Brady Belichick argument. It's like, if you get to play under a certain head coach, like look at Kyle Shannon in the 49ers, for example, certain quarterbacks thrive in certain, certain dynamics. And like if Alberto is able to step up and have a similar season to Fernando, I don't know. I think Kurt Signetti, he seems to be a kind of special head coach, like, so I think the opportunity to play under someone like that, you obviously take the risk in leaving. You know the system, you know how Signetti likes to coach, and if you can step up as a starting quarterback, win that job, the opportunity is there, but he is gone now, so he's made his
Yeah.
choice. um
Yeah. I loved getting to see him smile at the end of the game, though. It took winning a national championship to finally see a smile,
yeah,
go upon his face.
yeah,
And Google, like, if you actually did go Google him, did you see that? That when you would Google him at the top, Google would say like he won, like something like that, because
yeah,
he was
yeah,
like
yeah,
saying that in his speech. That was great. The whole finish of the season, like, yeah, I know Miami worked hard to get to where they were, and there was discussion and debate of if they should even be in the playoff, and then there they are in the national championship, playing at their home stadium, even though it was Fernando Mendoza and his family's home. So that was also really cool. And I was like, I think that there's going to be a good 50-50 of fans, maybe even 60-40. And I was right. Like, you could pan, and there was way more red shirts than there were of orange and
mm.
green, which was a plus to see from my TV personally.
Yeah, yeah. Like just, and I think Mendoza, like what adds to the whole dynamic of the season is how much of a unique character he is. Like my earlier memories of college football, dating years, it's like Johnny Manziel, and after him it was kind of Cam Newton. Like these highly rated quarterbacks when I college. First round, first overall draft picks, and they've all got a little bit of swagger. Like even look this season, like Diego Pavia, and every year, like the college game generates these kind of quarterbacks. Like they've got massive egos, and this was even before NIL, but you like Mendoza, he just breaks the mold in such an insane way. His responses are so measured. He's such a composed guy. Like he always gives, like grace to God, and like
Yeah.
and I think he swore after they won, and one of the
Yeah.
reporters was like, "Oh, Fernando, like I heard you swear," and he was like, "Yeah, I had to swear once because I was just so filled with emotion." And I've even seen like outside of the football field, like his engagement on social media, like he's not on any other platforms except for LinkedIn. Like it's just
Yeah.
so like, and he's like updating his LinkedIn like with
Yeah.
his
He's updating it
football
to open to
resume.
work. Like, what do you mean? You're about to get
Like,
drafted.
yeah, like it's like, as you were saying about him being likable, it's insane not to root for this guy, because he just breaks, and I'm sure he will be the first overall pick, whether it's the Raiders. It should be the Raiders, and whether it's somebody else who drafts into or trades into that spot. Like he is so unique, and I'm be really really rooting for him. My hope is that he does go to the Raiders. Everybody's like, oh, Oakland are gonna, or not Oakland, Vegas are gonna ruin this guy. Tom Brady is in the backroom team there, and I think if Mendoza and Brady start to link up, I'm hoping that Mendoza will have some sort of NFL career. I don't know. You'd hate to see him
Yeah.
have like a kind of real bust of an NFL career now after this kind of dream season.
Yeah, I definitely I mean, a lot of number 1 draft picks, like, don't normally have, like, the greatest, like, first few seasons. I mean,
Mm,
perfect example, like, look at Joe Burrow right now. His team is not good, like, relatively, like, they don't do well. Um But, yeah, like, if you as long as you keep the good mindset, and I don't think Fernando Mendoza should have a hard time with that. I mean, like you said, every single speech is like, "Glory to God," and even after he's like, "I would die for my team," like, that's the mindset that a quarterback is supposed to have, and that's the perfect example of, like, how many times have I said it on this show of, like, that's a team should be playing for each other, not themselves, and he, again, just being perfect and is exactly what every quarterback, every football player should strive to be like, is like Fernando Mendoza, like wearing their heart on their sleeve, wearing their patch for their team and playing for their team, throwing, giving it your all, giving it your 110% every single game. And he did that. And that's why he won the national championship. That whole team just played for each other. No 5 stars, no talent above another, just wanting to win for each other, not so that they can get a better NIL deal,
Yeah. And I think that just the play that sums that whole attitude up was that 4th and 5 scramble with essentially the entire season, the undefeated season, and the national title on the line. And he just tucks the ball and runs. And he was asked about that play. Like he boshes, kind of spins out of a tackle, runs over 2 defenders, and then just dives full stretch to cross the plane. And he was asked after the game about it, and he was like, there was not, like, as you said, I'm going to die for this play. I'm going to I will literally put my entire university program on my back, and I'm going to take this ball into the end zone. And like, what a moment. I mean, that was like goosebump moment, just everything on the line. And the star player just tucks and runs and just says, nah, like, this is my moment. I just think it was so sick. And then just throughout all of that, just incredible humility and grace. I think it's been such an interesting season, very, very unpredictable season, but a really, really interesting one to follow. Like, and honestly, like, especially from a European perspective, just a super, super cool storyline this year to be kind of following college football.
Yeah, it's hard not to at that rate. Like, it'd have to take someone who does not care about the sport whatsoever to say Fernando Mendoza who, Indiana Hoosiers who, but anyone who is involved in the sport, keeps up with the sport, and knows what's going on would be able to tell you that that was one of, if not the greatest storylines of college football that they've ever seen, the best that I've ever seen at least, and getting them to where they were to finish out the season the way they did, like, it's cinematic, it's poetic, it's exactly how I would want the season to end out. Like, yes, I was a little stressed a few times, I'm not gonna lie, because there was no way that I wanted to see Indiana win or Miami win. And so when it started to get near the end and, he threw that interception, Carson Beck always finds a way to choke. I was like, oh man.
Oh
He did it again.
no, not damn. Oh dang, Carson.
Yeah. Darn it.
Yeah.
He didn't even shake Fernando's hand afterward. Like, you should be so lucky to shake the hand of the Fernando Mendoza. And you can't even go and do that. You're that upset and that stuck up that your 7 years of college football led to this, and you can't go shake that guy's hand? Really?
Yep.
Get over yourself.
I just remembered there when you were saying that. Oh, I was like, oh yeah, Lauren hates other Florida schools. It all makes sense now. This is where the hatred is coming from. I was like,
Well, he
why
also
is
came
he
from
anti-Miami?
Georgia.
Oh yes. Yeah.
He came from Georgia, so that doesn't help. I like USF because my brother goes there and my dad went there. I'm okay with South Florida, but like USF is UCF is USF's rival, so I don't like them. Tallahassee, FSU is ours, so I don't like them. Miami, one of our rivals, don't like them. Everyone else is kind of irrelevant to me for the most part. But
Yes.
I have not liked Miami because they have been a rival of Florida for so long, and Carson Beck goes from Georgia, one of, if not our biggest rival, to Miami, another one. So like, I have no other excuse other than to dislike Miami even more.
I mean, yeah, it's just by default, obviously.
Yeah, I was seeing so many things that like every other Florida school that isn't Miami, like, and it was them being like big Indiana fans. I'm like, yeah, like everyone else gets it. Tallahassee, like FSU is also a rival of Miami. And if you go to USF or you go to UCF, like you're just gonna hop on the bandwagon because he wants to see Miami win. Who wants to see Fernando Mendoza sad? Not me. I'll tell you that.
No. He deserved it. I think honestly, after the season they had, it had to finish that way. It
Yeah.
just had to finish that way. So
The
looking
prophecy
ahead,
played out.
yes, and you would call that months ago. I actually wasn't too hot on them still. I mean, like there were a lot of, all these kind of rumors about like the scheduling and this kind of like, like the scheduling argument always comes into college football. But like I actually, even heading into the playoffs, until they beat Ohio State in the final
I
game
was
of
gonna
the
say,
regular
going all
season.
the way back to that last game of the season, when you thought Ohio State was gonna win, and you thought that Julian Sain was gonna beat Fernando Mendoza for Heisman.
Yeah. I still think Sayan will have a great season next year, though. I'm still sticking to that
Yeah, he
Ohio State.
probably He's due up.
Him and Jeremiah Smith. Although I do think Ryan Day is kind of under pressure now as a head coach. I don't know.
Oh,
I
for sure.
mean, like, because
Just
I,
like he
I
needs to
think,
perform next season for sure.
yeah, yeah. Because I was thinking about, you mentioned there about like, it's such a good time to get into college football because of the storyline of Indiana. Like, my whole exposure, for the first, I've been following American football for 20 years, NFL first, but college football more recently. But over the last 10 or 15 years, like, it's like my exposure of college football was all about Alabama and Nick Saban. It was all Alabama. I didn't even know, other programs until kind of, Clemson became a bit relevant
Really?
after a while. And yeah. But like, so like when I first started following college football, it was just Alabama dominated because they were all the ones entering the NFL. So it was kind of like a
Mm,
filter down system. And obviously it was just the Saban era of domination. But now, you even look at the college football playoffs last season and this season, you've got a very varied selection of teams. Like Boise State got pretty far last year, and now you've got
yeah.
Indiana winning it. So like, you have this, I think it feels like a breath of fresh air especially for new people kind of looking to maybe get into the space and follow the sport. It's like, well, look, you do now have outliers. It's not like, oh, the same two or three schools, year
Yeah.
in, year out, just being at the top. And I don't know if that will continue because NIL is just getting like just ridiculous. But that kind of like that one school dominance just doesn't seem to be relevant anymore.
Yeah, because for a long time it was always, I mean, yeah, it was Alabama for a long time under Saban, and then it's Georgia and it's Ohio State, and then it's Georgia and it's Ohio State, and then Notre Dame starts looking really good, and then Alabama, it's like, oh, can Kalen DeBoer do what Saban did? And the answer is no. No one can ever recreate the Saban era because college football is different than it was then. No one will ever recreate the Saban era. No one will ever recreate the Georgia and Kirby Smart era, even Kirby Smart himself. Like there's just no way to going back to that era of football with the way that things work now. But it's definitely a good time to get into it. I mean, there's so much going down, even in the off season right now. I mean, the transfer portal is closed, so everyone is like pretty fine on their thing. Although the coaching carousel mess has started to die down, and seeing where people have ended up will make this next season very interesting. So many new coaches at schools with players that were coming from one big school to another big school, or a small school, smaller, like USF. They had a great season, but then you see their head coach Alex Golish and a ton of USF players, including their quarterback Byron Brown, go up with him. So Auburn's going to be an interesting team to watch next season too. I mean, Arkansas, UF, Ole Miss, LSU, so many SEC teams too, Kentucky, with new coaches this season, which will make it a very interesting conference year.
Yep. Yeah. And on that topic, let's begin at home. John Sumrall, new head coach of the Florida Gators, coming over, as you said, from what may be perceived as a smaller school, Tulane. They had a good season this year, but eventually did get eliminated from the playoffs. Are you optimistic about Sumrall coming in? Is there a quarterback? Like Florida obviously had a very, very poor season this year, as we documented pretty well throughout these episodes. They've now lost their head coach and lost their quarterback. So is it a sense of a new page, kind of fresh start, or is it a bit like hesitant? Like nobody really knows what to expect.
Well, I will say one thing. I don't think that we didn't so much lose our head coach, we got rid of him. And then when it comes to DJ Lagway, we didn't so much lose, we just kind of gave that up willingly. He's going from a big SEC school where he was expected to perform, did not. He's going back to his roots, going to Texas, going to Baylor. And so I'm sure he'll do great there. The conference is nothing compared to what he was playing in. Good for him, regardless, I guess. But when it comes to Summerall coming to UF, I am very optimistic. I mean, I've seen so many things on social media of just like, this guy is psychotic in the best way and this a couple of days ago too, he was they got him on video telling, some of the press that he doesn't let his players wear the Gator logo yet, or like the Gator script on their helmets or on their shirts, because that logo, that right to wear the Gators has to be earned. And so there's videos of them in practice. They're just wearing blue shirts with their last name. I'm like, I love that. Like
So
it's
American.
giving me such Spurrier energy, honestly. Like of having to earn playing for the University of Florida, because it is a privilege to play here. Like, yes, the past few seasons have not looked incredible, but for the most part, you're playing in the SEC. You're playing for a team that has 3 national championships. Not all SEC schools have that, hardly any. And you're playing for such a big franchise and such a well-known logo in school. Like, that is something that has to be earned. And I really like that he's done that. And all of the other things, saying like he's psychotic in the best way, like a recruit, he was at the basketball game this past weekend, and a recruit like told him there that he was 100% committed to UF, and he nearly knocked him over. Like, he like almost like hopped on that guy. They almost both fell over. And he is just so intense about this team and the school already, only being the head coach for a few months now. And you can see that in his personality, that he is crazy in a great way. And he has already taken over the program and made sure that people are like Coach G and Billy Gonzalez, who is the interim coach, had said that playing for the patch, and he is making them earn the right to play for that patch. And I think that that's really noble. And it's what I used to say all the time, is like, a coach should have a lot of respect for the school that they're coaching for and a lot of admiration. And I can tell that he does, and he wants his players to as well. So it looks good for me so far. And I will support the hire, and I will support him, John Summerall, until he gives me reason not to. And I'll give him a couple years, because, first year out the gate, like, it's obviously tough for any coach.
Yeah. I mean, he's at a pretty, like, his head coaching career so far has been extremely successful. Like, he has walked in to essentially 2 different programs, albeit smaller programs than the SEC, which is essentially the elite level of college football. And he has turned them into winning programs. So I mean, if you just judge primarily, he was at Tulane for 2 years, and then prior to that, I think maybe Troy or something like that. But winning seasons, right? So like, that's what he's done. He's been a head coach in college football, and he's had winning seasons, and now he's making a significant step up into the SEC. And I think if you were a Florida fan, you'd have to be optimistic, because I didn't think your previous head coach was very good. And I watched this might sound like the most ridiculous journalism of all time, but I watched that Netflix documentary, Any Given Saturday. I think that's what it's called. It's about college football. Anyway, it's amazing. Gives a real insight into the schools. I actually loved it. It's such a good
Great,
Netflix
right?
documentary. Yeah. And they did like a lot of coverage on Florida. And I didn't rate him as a head coach, I'll be honest. So I if I was a Florida fan, as you are, passionately fan, I would be more optimistic this season. And I think as far as DJ Lagway is concerned, I think the money, I think just the money got to him, honestly. Like, his performances did not, he was not performing like an SEC quarterback. And I don't think, if you want to have a winning season, I would not, if he was still, from your perspective, I'd rather him gone than him to be there for next season, heading into a new season.
Yeah, and near the end of, like, his coaching, Billy Napier him and DJ started to just resemble each other in the fact that they both looked like they didn't care. Because the day that Billy Napier retired, he had the same expression on his face, and would speak the same as he would in a press conference after a game he lost 4 years later. And DJ Lagway just started, like, on the field, I want you guys spitting at each other from screaming at each other. Your face needs to turn red. That's the kind of emotion that you need to have when you play for the Southeastern Conference. And neither of them seem to have that. So go back to Sammo, Billy. That's fine. That's where you belong. And then DJ is going to go over to a smaller school, relatively, that football is not what they're known for by any means. And he probably will excel there because expectations are slightly lower. So for both of them, like, that's fine. But that's one of the reasons I'm so excited for Summerall, is that he's going to have the emotion. He has the intensity that a head coach of any conference, honestly, should have. Like, you need to care about your team and your players and your success just as much as any other coach. And Billy Napier never gave that. And it'll be even more interesting too, because it's not like he's just one of 2 or one of 3 coaches who came in for this season. Like, the SEC hired over, I want to say, like, half of the SEC staff had to be let go, like the head coaches. Like, there's like 8 new head coaches, I believe. So it's like he's running with everyone now. Like, you got Kirby, and you have Kayla DeBoer, who's already been there. And I mean, yeah, Lane Kiffin, left Ole Miss to go to LSU, but he's still been in the SEC for a long time. And so those guys, they're not in their rookie season versus Alex Golish is coming in. This is his first SEC season at Auburn, and Summerall coming in his first SEC season here. Every single school is going to look a little bit different, and the matchups is what's going to be even more interesting because they have to play even more teams than they would have had to before.
Yes, we were just talking before we began about the 9-game schedule. So there's been a change to the SEC going forward from next year on. They've changed from essentially an 8-game format to a 9-game format. Now, I was educated on this approximately 30 minutes ago by the incredibly informed Lauren over here in America. But basically, they are now changing the SEC to a 9-game conference schedule starting from next year. So, Lauren, if you'd like to enlighten us on what that change means for specifically SEC schools.
So basically, the SEC would play relatively like the same schools every year. And so, for example, Florida, we always played Georgia. That was like our top permanent rivals, not permanent, our top rivals that we would play every year was always Georgia, LSU, and Tennessee. And then, we'd have maybe South Carolina every once in a while, Missouri sometimes, rarely, honestly. Never play Alabama. This past year was the first time, or we played Texas at home this past year. That was the first time in like 100 years, like something near that, I think it was. It had been a really long time. And, granted, Texas was just added to the SEC only 2 seasons ago, but a lot of teams that they wouldn't normally see, Auburn, they'd hardly ever play Auburn. It was a lot of the same teams, always played Ole Miss. And so they kept those teams pretty much the same. But now they've changed it to where, every single SEC team has 3 permanent rivals that they play every single year. So for Florida, it's Georgia, Kentucky, and South Carolina every single year until for whenever they decide to make another change, because they always seem to be trying to do that. Florida will play those 3 schools, which means that they don't play LSU or Tennessee every single year anymore, which, as a fan, it kind of sucks. It's like one of those rivalries that you look forward to. Like, you want to boo off the Tennessee fans and you want to boo off the LSU fans and, talk all the crap that you want to say, even if you win or lose, you look forward to those rivals because they're old SEC rivals. It's schools that have been in the SEC for a long time, have played each other for a long time. Granted, Georgia, that rivalry is not going anywhere, but now that they have head into this SEC 9-game conference schedule, there's the question of tougher schedules, fewer playoff teams, or, SEC has always had the hardest slate. And, now there's the whole talk of if the Big Ten is now the big conference, they're the big dog. Indiana goes and wins. Ohio State was in there and did a lot. Oregon made it in. And, there was no SEC team in even the final 2. Yeah, Ole Miss was there. That looked great. Looked great for Pete Golding. Wish the best for him. But in general, it now basically means that as if their schedules weren't hard enough, they're making it even harder and making sure that you have to play those 9 SEC games every single year. So the Big Ten will easily benefit from this because they already have a lighter conference depth. SEC is yes, the Big Ten has won the national championship the last couple years, but in regards to their actual conference, the SEC is still harder. Their opponents are each other. It's always been a harder slate, but now making sure that they do have this 9-game schedule, it's, makes one wonder, is there going to be fewer teams in the playoffs that are SEC because they're like, they're knocking each other off. That's the whole point. Like they are trying to make it better games, and the fans wanted better games. Everyone wanted better games, but the athletic directors also want this safer path. So they tried to match up some of the schools that they think you'll get some wins here and there. Like Kentucky and South Carolina haven't been the strongest football teams in the SEC recently. Neither has Florida in the last 5-6 years. So they make sure that they're trying to do that. But, who's to say in the next 10 years that Kentucky isn't just a dog and they're facing up against Georgia, and you're questioning who's going to win, or you're watching Alabama and South Carolina, in overtime. So I think that the 9-game schedule, like I understand it. It is going to make for better football, better games to watch. But I think that it'll have to be looked at again, in maybe another 10 years when teams start to look a little bit different. Maybe they want to add another SEC team for whatever reason in the next 20, 30 years. I wouldn't personally. I don't think any other team needs to be in the SEC. But it's just very interesting. Like there's so many changes that's happening in college football, but now that they have this, it's going to be interesting. I mean, the coaching carousel plus having to play all of these games, like we have not had to face South Carolina. I think it's been 2 seasons. And now working Auburn in there, playing Oklahoma, playing Missouri, playing teams that we haven't had to see as often, but then in turn not getting to play Tennessee and LSU takes away that rivalry, which kind of stinks. But I get why they did it. And I think that it's going to be beneficial when it comes to like ratings at least. But after 1 or 2 years, I'm curious to see how the SEC will play out in the playoffs, like how many teams will be in there since they're literally just playing each other, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. And that's a challenge because it's something that you've spoken about before on the show is like like is like bad football, right? Like it's a topic that you've brought up, and we did see a bit of it now. Granted, we did see a bit of it also from Alabama, who are a very very reputable school. Like Alabama really got belts to ass from Fernando Mendoza and the Hoosiers, but in general, like those kind of quote unquote smaller schools creeping in at the end of the college football playoff bracket, you know, at the bottom of the top 12, and they kind of enter in, and then they're all of a sudden playing these huge SEC schools like the like to kind of follow on what you said, if you now have more SEC teams losing games during the season, they're now going to be less likely to make that playoff bracket. So now you're filling up those playoff spots with essentially, you know, like I don't mean to be dismissive, obviously, because Indiana, like, you know, Indiana have just done it. Like they're proof of like why schools should have a chance. But generally speaking, like Tulane and James Madison, for example, this year they went in under different reasons, but like it is tough for those schools to maintain a competitive level with these SEC schools. And like the college football committee, like the college football playoff bracket, to me is just the wildest thing ever. It's just a group of dudes in a room sitting around a table, and they're just saying, yeah, I like them, I don't like them, I like them, I don't like them. And there are arguments every year, and there was an argument this year over even Miami's inclusion, who obviously ended up getting to the final. But like you saw, there was drama. Like Texas obviously deserved to be there. Notre Dame backed out of, you know, like the bowl games because they were so bitter over being excluded. Like, so you always have at the very end of like at the outside, just outside that kind of top 12, like the 13, 14, 15 ranked schools, there's going to be a lot of issues there. So I think if you start to blur the lines with the SEC, where they're just playing extremely competitive games week in, week out, and then, you know, you've maybe another school just playing weaker opposition, I think it's gonna lead to a lot more confusion over what actually makes a college football playoff school. You know, even this year, Alabama, I think they lost 3 games. They were the only team to have lost 3 games, but they got included, and then they got whooped by Indiana. You know, so it was kind of like, you know, I like, to me, the committee, the choosing of the top 12, although it can create a little bit of drama and narrative and storyline, it's just insane. Like for the amount of, you know, money and pressure and views and like kind of national, and even now, I mean, like I'm an Irish guy talking about it, like international scope that this game has. I mean, game as in the college football game, like to have just a group of 13, you know, I know I'm being a bit dismissive calling them dudes, like they're, you know, former coaches and directors and stuff, but like
Yeah.
they are just handpicking these schools based on, you know, kind of like, it's just so subjective. Like it's so subjective in so many other levels of sport. We have, you know, points. If you you know, in Europe we do points in a table, and in the NFL it's you win or you lose. But then for the college football playoff rankings, it's like you just get picked by a guy who likes you. And like, it's just like, you know, how can you justify that going forward when you're just going to keep shoving all the SEC schools closer together?
Yeah, I am happy that because there was talks of them doing a 16 game playoff bracket now. And apparently, like, you know, SEC, Big 10, Big 12, they all had, maybe not Big 12, but ACC, like they agreed and they were like, yeah, sure, whatever. And they eventually voted against it, which I'm very happy with because I honestly, as much as I love college football, they're already extending it out more than it needs to. I mean, it's 2 months after the national championship is like 2 months after when the regular season ends. You know, it's extending way too long. If anything, it would need to the playoffs would have to start closer to when the final game was, but I think 16 teams is just too many. Um, you're having these, I mean, this is what the sport's all about, but you're essentially having these players give their all. I mean, they have to give their all in every game, but like, you know what I mean? Like they're working so much harder, putting their bodies on the line even more just to get to that next game. And imagine the team that has to do it, you know, 7 or 8 times just to win that national championship. Like you have players who are going to get hurt. You have players who are going to put their bodies, their well-being on the line. And then, you know, essentially they could ruin their career because they had to play so many extra games. Like I don't like 12 already feels like a lot, but I think that I'm okay with it now. Then there's, you know, the whole debate of, you know, the conference champion from Sammo or Tulane from the G5, you know, conference having to be in there. That's already a big discussion, but, you know, for a further time. That one I think is dumb. The SEC though, and all of their permanent rivals, like the way that I see this playing out is like take Alabama. You know, they have Mississippi State, Tennessee, and Auburn as their permanents. You know, like I said, like Tennessee is a pretty, you know, relatively good team, and they have to play Alabama. But then you take Arkansas, and I mean, LSU's they're constant, but like if Texas looks how they did this year, and Missouri looks how they did this year, and then Arkansas shows up how they did this year, that's 3 losses in Arkansas' schedule. That changed nothing for them. Or you look at like Auburn. Alex Golish is a new coach. I don't think he'll be able to adjust as quickly because that's just not how it normally gets to work. Like not everyone can be Kirk Cincinnati, you know what I mean? Especially in the SEC. And they keep Auburn, like I said, and then Georgia and Vanderbilt. Georgia's always a powerhouse team. Vanderbilt, without Diego Pavia, don't know how they'll look next year, but say that they look similar to this year. I mean, it's the endless cycle of how it's, you know, typically supposed to look. And Kentucky having to, you know, get another coach, they play us and then South Carolina and Tennessee. Don't know how that game will look against Florida and South Carolina, but Tennessee, you know, that's another beast in its own. Tennessee's always a very good team. As much as I hate to admit it, they're always a very good team. Josh Heupel is an amazing coach, and I will give him all the credit. I think that he's an amazing coach. He's a really, really good educator to his players, and he's a good role model for them, I believe, as well. And so he's always led a very powerful Tennessee Vols team, and no matter who plays them, they're working hard to earn their win every single time. So you take some of these teams, like I said, you know, Kentucky, Florida, South Carolina, sometimes Mississippi State, that just aren't always the higher ups of the SEC, and pair them against these teams that are, what are you going to get? You're getting more losses on their schedule. You're getting less SEC teams in the playoff if you do it like that. You know, only so many teams can win in the SEC. Only so many SEC teams can get in the playoff. Are you hurting our chances, or are you trying to help us when it comes to having that SEC overload and like having 6 SEC teams in the playoff? Or do you just want them to beat each other and then you have 3? You know, and then it's surrounded by ACC and Big 10, Big 12 teams, and those 2 Sunbelt and G5 teams that don't even need to be there, in my opinion. But
to me, it feels like a kind of some concepts we've had over in Europe in professional sports of this kind of like a super league idea where it's just essentially you gather all the best and richest clubs and you just kind of throw them all in together. As I said, I only heard about this just this evening. It sounds like that to me, where they're trying to almost promote the game even further. So what do you do? Like, you know, these SEC schools, like they've got the biggest stadiums, they've got probably the most passionate fans, at least judging from you anyway. I know a population of about 2 SEC fans, and they love their school a lot. So you know, that's not like, of course, other colleges, you know, other fans can love their schools and whatever, but like, you know, you kind of have you know, all the big names in college football, most of them play in the SEC. They're the biggest schools, they're the most reputable programs, the kind of the most notable brands, if you want to call these schools kind of brands. And it feels like it's just kind of like, you know, oh, let's just keep them playing each other so we can continue to, like, every week there's going to be a major matchup. Like every week there's going to be a headline, you know, 2 headline games. And it's just like that. That's what it sounds like to me. Almost just making all the good guys play each other and kind of like separate them into an elite kind of bracket and stuff. Although the SEC might be kind of that way anyway. in any case, just to finish up today, I'm gonna call it now. It's still January, but let's just cast a very, very, very short eye on next season. Okay, I think the obvious one is Ohio State. Like they've got a lot of returning players. At least from a European perspective, the obvious thing is, okay, the transfer portal and coaching and stuff makes a difference, but like also a lot of players are leaving for the draft. So obviously Mendoza's not going to be playing next year. So Indiana may not be the same level of threat. But Ohio State have Julian Sayin, their quarterback is staying, Jeremiah Smith, and they haven't changed their head coach. Like equally with Oregon, they'll be good. Like Notre Dame, but they also lost Jeremiah Love, the running back who was entering the draft. So I think next season is going to be interesting. And I also am on the down low rooting for Arch Manning, because I think he's been unfairly treated because his second name is Manning. I know you don't like that one, but I just hope that Manning has a good season. I might be a little bit of a hook'em horns if I had to choose. Is there anybody like in super early stages? Is there any school that you like that you really think are looking strong for next season?
I think that now hear me out, because I was rooting against Oregon when they were playing Indiana, obviously. But they're another team that has not won their national championship yet. They make it in the playoffs every year, and Dan Lanning's psychotic. I would be scared to play that man. And that team is, again, always really good. They always make it. They always go far. And, Dante's a good quarterback. And now they have, what's his face? The other guy who transferred in.
Dylan Raiola. What a weird transfer, by the way.
Dylan Raiola. And so they'll have him after that following season if he doesn't decide to leave again. But I think that they'll go far. I don't think that they'll get their championship again this year, just because I want to see like how let me see a few games and I'll let you know how I feel about that. But I'm not saying that this team will get in the playoff, but I honestly do believe that Auburn will surprise us next season, because I respect the hell out of Alex Golesh and what he did with that USF program, and taking his talents to a team like Auburn that has not performed very well in the last few years. And I do think that Jackson Arnold was, kind of got thrown to the wolves a little bit, and that was tough for him. And their quarterbacks recently have just been, they have the numbers and you think that they're going to do great, and then their offense just can't support them. Their defense more than can't support them. And they're getting a really powerful, very strong quarterback like Byron Brown and a good playmaker like Alex Golesh. And they had so many teams or so many players that they did recruit that went from USF to Auburn and from other big schools that also went to Auburn to go join them and be a part of Byron Brown's offense. Having such a tough guy like him being your leader, I think they'll surprise us. I really do. I'm not an Auburn fan by any means, but I like Alex Golesh. Their colors are similar to ours. I like Byron Brown. I really like that quarterback. But I would like to see them be competitive, because I haven't gotten to see it. Of course, I'd like to see Florida be competitive first. I want to see them win. I want to see them, prove everyone wrong and be the coach that comes out and has an amazing season in his first year. Pull a Kirk Signetti and get there in 1 year.
Okay.
I know, that's crazy. Sorry, that's the dream. But I think that Auburn will surprise us. I don't know how well their season will go, but I think that it'll be interesting to watch. Other teams, I've kind of been reading that maybe, is Kirby Smart's reign slipping? I don't know. Is it in decline? Does he have these unrealistic expectations that he'll never be able to meet? Are they going to win a national championship again soon? Or I don't know. Their recruits are still very elite. They always have very, very good players. I mean, Twinkle Toes, their quarterback, I'm blanking on his name at the moment, but that probably shouldn't be the thing that I call him. But he's very good. He did good for their team. He waited his turn and he was a great quarterback. I think that Ole Miss will have another great year. Pete Golding was able to take his team to the Final Four of the playoffs without Lane Kiffin. Suck it. But I unfortunately do think that LSU will have a very strong season with Lane Kiffin as their coach and with the guys and coaches that he brought over. He brought over almost half his staff. And
there'll be a lot of eyes on LSU as well next year.
100%. That's going to be one of the biggest storylines of next season is how does what is Lane Kiffin going to do with LSU that he couldn't do with Ole Miss, you know?
Yeah.
And that'll be interesting to play out too. I do early if we're doing early predictions of playoff picks, I would put LSU in there right now for the most part. Don't want to admit it, but I have to be unbiased, I guess. I'd love to see Clemson make a comeback. I've always been a fan of Dabo Swinney and his team. Love to see them be able to do something. And I'm trying to think of any other team. I feel like Alabama would probably Notre Dame too. What is Notre Dame going to do next season? You know, after having a hissy fit, not making it in, saying we're not playing in a bowl game because we didn't get in the college football playoff. Okay, you have a year to cry about it and then get over it and try to get it again next year. I think that they'll come back strong because they want to prove that we were supposed to be in it last year, so we're going to get in it this year. I'd probably put them in there. I don't know. I feel like my earliest picks, that's probably what the ones that I could give you right now. I don't know. I'm not saying I'd put Clemson in there, but I'd see Clemson be successful.
Okay. Here's my bold take. It's January. Quote this. Arch Manning wins the Heisman. Cam Coleman, Auburn transfer, has gone to Texas. Arch Manning, Heisman winner in 2027. Mark my words. Texas will be in the playoffs. They won't be the number 1 seed, but they'll be in the playoffs. And Arch Manning's going to win a Heisman next year. He's going to be the best quarterback and best player in college football playoff next season. In the college football next season.
The best
Player in college next season. Out of everyone. Mark my words.
That's a take. That's definitely
that's my bold prediction.
You definitely just spoke. I mean, that's for sure.
Come on, baby. Hokum. That is the take. Arch Manning.
Steve Sarkisian's a good coach. I'd love to see what he does with Cam Coleman because that offense was already pretty talented. Arch just kind of lost it there for a second, but you know, who's to say he doesn't get his spark back? He is able to take his offense far. Who knows? I mean, I'm not agreeing with you. I think that Texas will be a very good team next year. They'll be competitive. I'd probably put them in the playoff too if I were to do an early ranking, but I'm not exactly where you're at just yet. I'll say that.
Get on the hype. You gotta get on the hype. Come on.
I mean, I don't dislike Arch Manning. I'll say that, but this year was a lot of like pitting DJ Lagway. Like, let's pretend that he's still a part of my school when I care. But putting DJ Lagway and Arch Manning against each other because they had these big breakout freshman seasons, and then, you know, one of them is going to win the Heisman in 2025. Both of them, for lack of a better word, shit the bed and don't really have a great season. Arch definitely had a better season than DJ, but they would have been in the playoffs if they hadn't lost to Florida, 100%. I hate to say it, but that's a bad look for them. You know, they could have been in it this year if they had kind of just pulled that off. Glad they didn't. Don't get me wrong. Next season will be different, though. They have a different slate. They have offense coming in that is very talented. Like we said, Cam Coleman. And Sarkisian's always been a great coach, great play caller, and he's very aware of what's going down on the field at all times, trusts his coordinators. And they just got Jabbar Jalouk, our running back. Florida's running back went to Texas. So with him, you know, that also sets them up for some success as well. He's a really good running back coach. They have all the means for it. Interesting to see what they'll do with it. I'll say that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think we can wrap up there. Lauren, as always, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks for joining me today. And we will be running this, I believe, throughout the next few months. Obviously, we've got the draft to look forward to. And then, honestly, we'll be just straight into next season. There'll be games in Europe, games in America. So a lot to look forward to. Lauren, thank you for being here.
Of course.
See you next time.